Toadstool Tour is the pinnacle of Mario Golf. At least that's what me and a large number of the series fans think. But did you know the game originally sucked? Yeah, when Toadstool Tour was first shown to the public, people said it looked horrible. And when it was first playable at E3, people said it was terrible to play. So how did Camelot turn Toadstool Tour into a gem? How did they claw back from all the bad press? And did you know there's an unused hole in the game's files? Well, on this episode of Beta64, we're gonna learn all about the game's development and even see some things that have never been documented before in Toadstool Tour. But first, a word from me. I have a fun fact for you. Beta64 is now over 13 years old. I have been uncovering the real stories behind game development for over a decade, and it's thanks to my supporters on Patreon that I'm able to keep making these handcrafted videos, even as YouTube keeps changing around me. If you are fascinated by gaming history and you want to see my content kept alive, consider joining the Beta64 Patreon. It's there we're building the future of the channel for the long term together. Now, on Patreon, you get hundreds of exclusive posts, exclusive behind-the-scenes videos, my exclusive podcast, exclusive monthly Q&As, and you can even get your name in Beta64 episodes alongside other supporters who are passionate about preserving gaming history. If you've been watching my channel for years and you've always been curious how to support my videos further, the best way is on Patreon. You can be a part of Beta64's next chapter over on Patreon. The link is in the description and also the pinned comment. Now, I say we get back to the development of Mario Golf Toadstool Tour. As you'd expect, development of Toadstool Tour began after the release of Mario Golf on the Nintendo 64. Unfortunately, we don't have an exact time frame on when development began, but we can speculate. My guess would be sometime in 2001, after the release of the original Golden Sun. The reason being that Golden Sun was a very ambitious game that would have likely been Camelot's main focus until its release in August of 2001. See, Camelot didn't like developing more than one major title at the same time, but they attempted to do it with Toadstool Tour and Mario Power Tennis. I mean, they already had prior experience making Mario Golf and Mario Tennis on the Nintendo 64, so surely making both at once wouldn't be that bad, right? Well, it was bad. Camelot quickly realized that there was no way that their team of 30 people were going to be able to develop both games simultaneously. And because of that, they decided to push off Power Tennis and focus efforts on Toadstool Tour instead. Of course, the game wasn't called Toadstool Tour at the time. No, it was simply referred to as Mario Golf GC, with GC obviously standing for GameCube. Now, I gotta talk about the elephant in the room here. Is that a prototype screenshot of the game? Why, yes it is, and it has a very interesting story behind it. So, you know Famitsu magazine, right? It's the most widely read video game magazine in Japan, and it's known to publish exclusive information from time to time thanks to their in-depth developer interviews. One such exclusive was revealed in March 2002. Famitsu got the honor and privilege to be the first to reveal that Camelot was making a new Mario Golf and Mario Tennis game for the Nintendo GameCube. But it was more than just text on a page saying, yeah, it's happening. The magazine also got that early screenshot of the game. A couple actually. And these two screenshots made it onto the web thanks to Nintendo's official website. That's where we got to see an early logo for the game too, which is clearly just a temporary one. So in that case, I think we're better off taking a closer look at the screenshots. It shows Mario taking a shot in the middle of nowhere alongside Luigi, Peach, and DK. That means these were the first characters confirmed for Toadstool Tour. And fun fact, these models are actually the same ones used in Mario Kart Double Dash. Turns out, Nintendo made high poly models of all the Mario characters to be used for Double Dash, and then let Camelot use the same ones for Toadstool Tour. But if we compare the early screenshot with DK's model from Double Dash, they are not going to look exactly the same. That's because both Nintendo and Camelot modified the original model to better fit their respective games. All this info comes from an interview with Tadashi Sugiyama, one of the producers behind Double Dash. That's where he said that the models used in both Mario Golf and Mario Kart for the GameCube started from the same source. Now, other than those 2 screenshots we've been looking at over and over again, what else did Camelot reveal about this new Mario Golf game? Well, pretty much nothing. Guess we'll have to go straight to the source. Shugo Takahashi was, and still is, Camelot's vice president and was heavily involved in the development of the original Mario sports games on the Nintendo 64. You probably already know a lot about him if you've watched my previous video on the development of Mario Tennis and Waluigi. And if you haven't watched that Beta64 episode yet, I'll put the link in the description. Anyway, Shugo was asked directly about this Mario Golf game for the GameCube. What does this new game do differently that sets it apart from the original on the Nintendo 64? Well, he went on record saying that it would build upon the first game with new controls and techniques. That's it. So basically all we know about this new Mario Golf game is that it was going to include more golfing. You know, we technically don't even know if these are actual in-engine screenshots of Mario Golf either. It's clearly not actual gameplay, but the debate is if these images were captured in-engine or if they were pre-rendered scenes made in their modeling software. At the time, people were convinced that these were in-engine screenshots. For one reason, they didn't look that great. There were lots of jagged edges and simplistic geometry, so if these were pre-rendered images, they weren't that good. And apparently, Camelot took note of this lukewarm reception and decided after this first reveal to make major improvements to the game's visuals. At least that's what IGN reported in January 8, 2003. IGN said that Nintendo Dream magazine stated in one of their issues that Camelot had done such a massive overhaul to Mario Golf's visuals that any player that got to see it would have their eyes pop out of their head. Now, I personally looked for this article in Nintendo Dream, and I couldn't find it anywhere. Not saying that IGN is a liar, far from it, it's probably out there. But after spending hours poring over multiple issues of the magazine, I just could not find it to verify their claim. And you know, even if I did find it, Camelot didn't include any images to prove this claim of eye-popping visuals. So again, at this point, we know next to nothing about this game. But it wouldn't be long after this report of a massive overhaul that Nintendo would step in to reveal some actual new info: Mario Golf GC's release date, which was set for July 28, 2003 in North America. But here's the weird thing. Now we know the release date for a game that we know nothing about. We don't have a name, we don't know what features are being added, we only have these 2, now very out of date, screenshots. Thankfully, it wouldn't be that way much longer, because E3 2003 was only 2 months away, and this new Mario Golf game was going to be shown at the show. I guess all we could do then was just wait for E3. Or at least that would have been the case, if it wasn't for a major leak that happened 2 weeks before E3. On May 1st, 2003, there was a little accident. Retailers decided that now would be the perfect time to list the new Mario Golf game on their online storefronts. Now, normally that wouldn't be a problem, except for the fact that they included box art for the game that not only revealed 4 new characters, but also the game's official name, Mario Golf Toadstool Tour. Well, for Nintendo's sake, maybe people will think the box art is fake? Let's take a look at it and, oh, no way. It looks way too good to be fake. Everyone could tell that this was real artwork, and at first, Nintendo didn't make any comments about it. But a few days later, they gave up and confirmed that yes, this new Mario Golf game was going to be called Toadstool Tour, which in turn also confirmed that the box art was real too. Of course, now we know that this wasn't the final version of the box art. Nintendo ended up going for something completely different. But it would be a shame not to use this render, with all the characters gathered around Peach's castle. So I'm happy to report that Camelot did end up using it in the game itself. In the final build, it appears at the end credits as a nice little congratulations screen. Wow, so we're going into E3 with a lot more info than expected. We now know the game's name, 8 confirmed characters, and we can even see what they meant by overhauled visuals. If we compare the screenshot and the box art side by side, I don't really see any difference. Well, except for Peach's outfit. But let's not spend too much time on this nitpicking whether or not they actually made eye-popping adjustments to the visuals.
Because on May 14th at E3 2003, we got to see more than just an image for the first time. We got actual gameplay footage of Toadstool Tour, thanks to 2 trailers and a show floor demo as well. Let's start off by checking out the 2 trailers, which show off 2 entirely different early builds of the game from different points in development. The first trailer we'll look at is the earliest build we have footage of, and it has a fair amount of changes. I only wish it had a bit more variety. It only shows 2 holes, both from Peach's castle grounds, Hole 1 and Hole 3. Though in this early footage, Hole 3 is actually called Hole 2 on the upper left corner. And since we're already looking at this corner of the screen, check out the course flag underneath the hole info. It's completely different in the trailer, though that icon was used in the final game on the results screen after finishing one of Peach's tournaments, just without the dark background. Heading back to the comparison, I think we should take a closer look at the early UI, because that's what's changed the most here. For instance, the background the club icon changed slightly, and so did the power icon. Oh, and where's Mario? He's usually hanging out right next to the power meter. Guess that changed at some point. And that's not all that changed over here. In the final game, the L and R icons are shaped like their respective buttons. But here in the trailer, it's just plain blue text. And speaking of text, instead of MPH being used next to the wind speed for miles per hour, we originally only had the letter M. Plus, the pin label is called rest in this early build, and the letter used for yard, it's capital in the E3 build and lowercase in the final game. Now come on, Andrew, that's such a small change. And you're right, but I bring it up as a nice segue to the next point. It's clear this build of Toadstool Tour was not completely finished being localized. This is the North American version of the game for E3. That's why it's using yards for the pin distance, and when putting it uses feet. Or at least it's supposed to. But this early North American build is still using meters when you putt. In other words, this trailer is a weird mishmash of different units of measurement. I mean, check out this section. It shows yards at the bottom and top of the screen and meters in the middle. It's clear they weren't quite done getting everything localized before recording this footage. Oh, and this part of the footage also highlights another change that I've got to mention. Notice something strange? Yeah, the lines that show off elevation changes are still showing even after hitting the ball. In the final game, when you're lining up your shot, it shows you these little lines to help you plan things out. Then when you hit the ball, they disappear, because at that point it's too late to correct anything anyway. But in this early version of the game, those lines never disappear, even during putting. Alright, that's par. Now would be a great time to compare this animation to the final game. But before we do that, I need to clarify something first. The pin location is randomized in Toadstool Tour, so that would be where the flag in the hole ends up. And since the player's position for the win and lose animation is dependent on the hole's position, that means where the animation plays is also random. As you'd be able to guess, it's kinda tough to compare things that are randomized. But lucky for us, there are parts of these sequences that never change. The animation itself, the player's position relative to the hole, and the camera angle. So if we compare the par sequence from this early build to the final version, and ignore Mario's random position, we can clearly see that the camera angle is different, with it being on the same level as Mario in this early build, and much higher up looking down on him in the final game. The animation itself is exactly the same though. And the same goes for DK and his bogey sequence. While the animation is the same, the camera angle is different, being much more zoomed in this first E3 trailer.
Now, as I said, that was the first E3 trailer. The second one uses footage from a later build of the game, so there aren't going to be as many changes to look at here. But it does show off a lot more than just Peach's castle, so don't worry, there's still plenty for us to look at and compare.
I consider this second trailer to be sort of a halfway point between the first one we saw and the final game. For instance, Mario decided to show up next to the power meter, but the L and R icons next to him are still just blue text. The club icon is now the same as the final version, but the flag is still different. Not to mention the hole number, yeah, it's off again. with hole 3 at E3 being hole 12 in the final game. But the question is, are there any new differences that we can spot in this second E3 trailer? Oh yeah, and it all starts with this intro cinematic for Peach's Invitational. The first obvious thing that you're gonna notice when comparing it to the retail build is that all the UI is missing. But other than that, the first part of the cutscene looks to be unchanged. The same can't be said about the next part though. It's a sweeping camera shot that pans from the pin towards the beginning of the hole, and that is nothing like the final game, which instead pans from the start of the hole and shows off a completely different view of the course. Alright, let's head on down and actually try out some swings. How do I do that again? Well, according to the boos in the trailer, you start swing using A button. Now for a gamer like me, I know that means the giant green A button on the controller, but for someone just popping in to take a few swings, that text could be a little confusing. To help with that, the final game makes things a lot more clear by just showing an icon of the A button instead. Alright, I think we're good to take our first swing. Oh wait, but first, we gotta learn about Toadstool Tour's new swing modes. We've got auto swing, manual swing, back, space, spin, instead of just backspin as one word like the final game has it. And that additional space also shows up in super top spin. But that's not all. Super top spin also has another change too. In the final game, performing that swing will cause flames and sparks to shoot out of your ball when it reaches the ground, but this E3 trailer shows us that originally, there weren't going to be any flames, only sparks. Now, as I said before, this trailer shows off more than just Peach's Castle, and one of those new courses is Blooper Bay, specifically Hole 10. Or at least it's Hole 10 in the final game. This build refers to it as Hole 3, along with a different, much darker flag icon. And after all that golfing, we got a bogey. Dang. Well, at least we can see another small change here. The sequence's camera is slightly more zoomed in compared to the final game. Not super noticeable, unless you're looking at it side by side like we are. But if we compare DK's par animation the same way, it's not just a little more zoomed in, it's a lot more zoomed in, with this weird looking fisheye lens effect.
Alright, the time has come for us to look at the show floor demo of Toadstool Tour at E3 2003. And I want you to know how incredibly difficult it was to find all this footage. I guess people at the show didn't really care about this new golfing game, because every time I would find footage of people walking around Nintendo's booth at E3, they would almost always skip Toadstool Tour in favor of Nintendo's bigger upcoming release, Mario Kart Double Dash. But in the end, I found 2 minutes of footage to compare. So, I think it's time that we find out what differences lie within them.
Let's start things off right with this early title screen used for the E3 demo, which features the same render used on the early box art. But of course, as we know, this image was eventually moved to the end credits, and the title screen got a real-time 3D model of Peach's Castle instead. And at this point, all we can do is press start, so let's do it and check out the demo's main menu, which includes a very happy Toad who immediately starts running around in a circle and doesn't ever stop. The final game keeps him standing in place, only running between menus and not in a circle. Now let's go back to that early main menu and focus on these icons, because pretty much all of them changed in one way or another, especially the ones at the bottom. Unfortunately, those down there, they don't have any labels, and they're pretty blurry too, so it's going to be hard to tell what they were supposed to be. Well, that is except for the one all the way to the right. That is definitely the Link icon from the final game, seeing as they look almost identical. The character portraits up top are also almost exactly the same, except for some reason they feature different characters. The E3 build decided it was best to feature Mario, then Mario and Peach, then they added in Yoshi, and finally DK. But the final version starts with Mario and Luigi, then adds in Peach and Yoshi, completely leaving out DK. A logical conclusion would be that Luigi wasn't playable in the demo, so they had to choose a different character that was playable, like DK. But we can't be sure of that, because unfortunately the footage cuts right before we can see which characters you could play as. Ah, well, what can you do? Let's just head over to the course and see what changes we can find over here. If we compare the show floor demo to the second E3 trailer, things are going to be pretty much identical. So much so that I'm going to assume that the second trailer and the demo are the same build of Toadstool Tour. But don't worry, we've still got plenty to look at. After all, this is a demo. The player is in complete control of the action and the camera. So let's take a look around the golf course and see things from a different angle. Whoa, the camera moves so fast. It appears that the camera controls are extremely sensitive in this E3 demo compared to the final game. And that's not just speculation. Attempting to do the exact same camera movement in the final game takes roughly 1.5 seconds to complete at full speed. And at E3, there it only takes half a second. In other words, they slowed down the camera movement by about 3 times before release. Well, even with the practically uncontrollable camera, I think we've got the shot all lined up. Let's charge the power meter and take a swing. Did you notice that? The sound effect that plays here is completely different from what we got in the retail build. Now at this point, I'm sure you're tired of seeing Peach's castle, so let's check out Blooper Bay. A course we only saw briefly in the last trailer, but is completely playable here on the show floor. Of course, as you'd guess, we're going to see a lot of the same changes from earlier. But this hole in particular, there's an interesting part that ended up getting removed. Flower patches. In the final game, this hazard is usually found in Peach's castle grounds, and not in Blooper Bay. I mean, the course's main aesthetic here is being next to water. You'd expect to see a ton of sand traps and not really flowers. But according to the label on screen, yeah, there were going to be a lot of flower patches here too in order to hinder your journey to the pin. Oh, and I should also mention that Easter egg of Pikmin flying out of the flowers, yeah, that wasn't present in the E3 demo. And that is all we got to see of Toadstool Tour at E3 2003. But what did the public think? Well, as I alluded to before, not a lot of people cared. I mean, look at this summary of the game from Kikizo. Couldn't sound more disinterested. Or check out these photos uploaded to the mushroomkingdom.net. Here's a great photo of Mario Kart Double Dash's LAN party at E3. And here, for comparison, is the only photo this person took of Mario Golf at the show. Blurry, flash covering a quarter of the screen, off-center, tragic. But it gets far worse for poor old Toadstool Tour. IGN's reported the game's demo was scathing, with them saying that the game not only looked bad, but played badly too. Now don't get me wrong, the article does make some good points. They mentioned specifically that using the C-stick to control the camera was incredibly frustrating due to it being oversensitive. And we know for a fact that it was true, based on our findings from before. So yeah, overall, IGN reported that the demo at E3 wasn't worth playing. But they also said that they were confident that Camelot would be able to smooth things out for the final product. And they eventually did. Camelot fixed the camera movement, added some more visual effects to the retail build to spice things up, but before they could finalize the game and release it, there was one last thing the development team had to do, and that was to make a new demo for Toadstool Tour, this time for the general public. And it would be distributed through Nintendo's interactive multi-game Demo Disc 11.
So what is an interactive multi-game demo disc? Well, to give some context, back in the GameCube days, you would often be able to play pre-release demos of upcoming games at your local electronics store. To make that happen, Nintendo would send out demo discs with multiple games on them to retailers. And for demo disc number 11, Camelot just so happened to be asked to make a demo for it. This disc was sent out to stores in July 2003, just a couple months after E3, and thanks to it being archived, we can play its Toadstool Tour demo right now.
That's right, this specific demo disc is widely available to play nowadays. But before we look at it, I want to pose a question. Is the demo of Toadstool Tour on this disc a duplicate of the demo from E3? And it turns out that question is very hard to answer. But I'll try my best to answer it as we look through this interactive, multi-game demo disc. To start our journey, let's boot up the disc and check out this store demo. And here's our first difference. You'll notice that the Nintendo and Camelot logo just fade in here, rather than Wario and Waluigi introducing them on signs. This section is also fully voice acted in the final game, but not in the demo. Here only the Nintendo logo has a voice introducing it, but it's not Wario, it's just some normal person.
Nintendo.
After that, we get the exact same title screen from the E3 demo. But since we're playing it ourselves, we're able to hear the song a lot better. It's almost the same as the retail build, but the early version has a lot of extra reverb added on. Pressing start, we get the exact same main menu from E3 too. But because it's higher resolution, we get a much better look at those early icons on the bottom row, which all say coming soon when highlighted. The first one here is clearly a memory card, and upon closer inspection, it appears to be almost identical to the icon for data. This icon appears under options in the final version, though if this demo is anything to go by, it was originally planned to be on the main menu. The next two icons are of Lakitu holding a camera and a generic golf course next to a house. My theory is that Lakitu was going to be for options since he's holding a camera, and the other one with the house, I'm gonna guess it was for lessons, but this is all just speculation. Now, so far, everything in this demo looks to be exactly the same as the E3 show floor demo. So why do I think it could be different? Well, it's because of the next screen for character selection. As I said before, we don't have any footage from E3 of this screen. So to figure out what playable characters were at E3, all we have to go on is IGN's report of the demo, which stated that Mario, Luigi, Yoshi, Peach, Donkey Kong, Koopa Troopa, Wario, and Waluigi were all at E3. But this store demo we're looking at now, it doesn't have Luigi or Wario. It is possible that IGN was just referring to the characters that appear on the title screen instead of who was actually playable in the demo. After all, Wario and Luigi's feet do appear on that screen. So I guess for now, this isn't definitive proof that the E3 and store demos are different, at least not yet. Okay, let's take a closer look at the character select screen, because I want to highlight some pretty interesting differences, like how the store demo is missing the character names overlaid on the models, the text description on the bottom was different, originally much more wordy, and not to mention the L button on the top left is huge behind the label instead of being a small icon. Oh, and where's Toad? He was running around on the last screen and now he's just not here. Well, at least they remembered to put him back in the final game. And those were just the visual changes. The biggest differences here are with the audio. First off, in the final game, all the characters have small audio clips that loop whenever your cursor is on them. But they are completely silent in the demo. The only sound you can hear is this terrible beeping noise that happens when switching between characters. Thankfully, this was changed later on. But that's not all. When you actually select a character, you get to hear another unique voice clip for each one. And this happens in both the final game and the demo. But almost every single voice is different between the two versions. Some are subtle changes, like Mario saying Mario instead of Wahoo.
Mario! Woohoo!
Or Peach saying Peach instead of Yeah.
Yeah!
But listen to Waluigi. Instead of this classic voice clip,
Tea time!
in the demo, he sounds like a completely different person.
Waluigi!
Or what about DK? Here's a clip from the final game.
Okay.
And here's the store demos version. Very, very different. Well, I'd say we compared enough of the screen. I think it's time we pick our character and select one of the two available modes, stroke play and doubles. All the other options in the back, those can't be selected. And after that, all that's left is to pick our course. We've got two to choose from, Mushroom Kingdom course and normal course. In the final game, Mushroom Kingdom course is called Peach's Castle Grounds, and normal course, well, that's just a compilation of various holes just made for the demo. Let me take you through them. The first is Hole 18 from Cheep Cheep Falls, the second is Hole 4 from Shifting Sands, and the last is Hole 10 from Blooper Bay. All these courses were also seen in the E3 footage and featured the exact same differences. Check it out, the store demo even has those flower patches that were originally planned for Blooper Bay. But the great part about this store demo is that we have complete control, so we get to see a lot more than what we could in just 2 minutes of show floor footage at E3. And let's start it all off by checking out this different transition to the opening cinematic, which has a bunch of shrinking squares instead of the star transition. Oh, and I can't forget to mention the music track here. It is so intense, at least it was for me after listening to it for hours. Here's what you hear in the final game. And here's the track from the demo. And this music does not go away. This one single track plays in the background the entire time that you are golfing. But thankfully, this isn't the only thing that you get to hear. There's also those early sounds for the power meter, the same ones from E3. Plus, you've also got an announcer announcing your shots. And they sound like a completely different person compared to the final game.
Nice par. Nice par.
Oh, and we've also got some early taunts here to mix things up, though they aren't fully voice acted like the final game.
You're cheating. Oh, come on. Are you sweating?
Instead, they just play some small noises. And that is where we arrive at another contradiction. So far, everything in the store demo seems to be just like the E3 demo. But once again, IGN's report throws a wrench in this conclusion. They say that the E3 demo did have characters doing voiceovers for the taunts. Again though, this might not actually be a contradiction. It's possible that by voiceovers, they were referring to the little sound bites. I mean, why would Camelot put fully voice-acted taunts in the E3 demo just to remove it from the store demo? That doesn't really make any sense. Honestly, there's only one thing that would prove that this store demo isn't the E3 one, and it's this quote. IGN states in this article that pressing the Z button toggles between normal and power swings in the E3 demo. But in both the final game and the store demo, the B button is what's used to toggle between swing types. If IGN reported this correctly, then yes, the version you play on the multi-game demo disc would be a slightly different build compared to the E3 demo. But here's the thing, I've been doing Beta64 long enough to know that sometimes these reports aren't quite right. If only we had another piece of evidence, so that way we can know for sure what the E3 demo's controls actually were. What's that? Oh, they were listed right underneath the TVs at Nintendo's booth? Well, perfect! Pull up an image of the controls, and let's see once and for all if these demos were the same. That is way too pixelated to read. It's definitely pointing to the Z button right there, but there's no way we're gonna make out what that text says. What about the video footage? They don't go down far enough to see it. Well, at least for now, I guess this mystery will just have to remain unsolved.
Now, before we leave this interactive multi-game demo disc behind and move on to Toadstool Tour's final release, I want to check out those additional locked game modes with you. But Andrew, they're locked. I thought you said there was no way you could select them. And you're right, you can't normally select them. But I thought it'd be fun to do it anyway. That's right, I personally made an action replay code, so that way for the first time, or at least I'm pretty sure for the first time ever, we're gonna check out those locked game modes together. And spoiler alert, there's some very interesting things in there that we were not supposed to see.
Let's start with the first locked mode, Tournament, which uses a trophy model that is quite different from the final version. In fact, it more closely resembles the final Star Tournament trophy instead, though the demo version is definitely a lot more rudimentary. It should also be clear, even if you don't read Japanese, that the text describing the mode has yet to be written out. It's just the name of the mode again, instead of this nice description. Now, what about what happens when you actually play this tournament mode in the demo? Unfortunately, it doesn't play any differently from normal stroke play. So let's move on to the next lock mode. This is Speed Golf. And from here on the selection screen, it looks pretty much the same as the final game, except for the missing description and different font. But once we start it up, there is a lot more to see. In the final version of Speed Golf, it starts you off with a sped up intro cutscene, and then Lakitu counts you down before you can actually start. But in this store demo, the intro cutscene plays at a normal speed, after which the timer starts immediately with no countdown. And once you reach the end of the hole, you're treated to a horrifically glitchy table that's filled with fake times. It never even puts your real time into it. The screen will always say that you finished in a bit over 9 seconds. As you could guess, the final version of this table is not glitchy and actually works. And finally, the last mode the demo tried to prevent us from playing, Club Slot, which has the title of the mode right over the model instead of being slightly below it. Now, there's a very good reason why we weren't supposed to play this mode. It's because it's exactly the same as stroke play. The machine at the beginning that randomly picks your clubs, it's not here at all, which is literally the entire point of Club Slot. So yeah, in the end, I'd say they had a good reason to block players from playing all 3 of these modes.
Only a couple weeks after this demo was given out to stores, Toadstool Tour released in North America on July 28, 2003. Japan, on the other hand, they didn't get their hands on the game until a couple months later, on September 5th. But in the meantime, they got their own exclusive demos for the game that are pretty much just like the final game, so there's really nothing to compare there. Now, that doesn't mean the video's over. Far from it. We can still do some more comparisons and get a lot of interesting insight on the game's development, thanks to the many unused things that we can find in the files of Toadstool Tour.
So to begin our look inside the retail builds files, I think we should start with another early, unused title screen for Toadstool Tour. But unlike the 183 that was just a 2D render, this is a fully 3D scene. Or at least, it would have been. This is actually a screenshot of it that's left over in the final game. The actual title screen itself, it isn't here. Just the screenshot and the golf course model it's showcasing. Still, this is way better than nothing. From the looks of it, it's a very simple design. It's possible that this was simply a placeholder until they finished the scene with Peach's castle. But the question is, did this title screen get made before the pre-rendered one in the demo, or after? Oh, and speaking of the demo, there are a lot of unused assets related to the store demo as well. For instance, there are a bunch of placeholder icons for different game modes. Most of them have the kanji for temporary slapped on them, so it's pretty clear they weren't actually meant to be used. But what I find interesting is that the font on the bottom is almost exactly the same as the one used in the store demo's locked modes. Speed Golf is the same, just with a different color, and the same goes for tournament mode as well. But I have no idea what that strange purple logo is. If you can explain to me why this represents, tournaments, let me know in the comments. Now, that trophy model we saw earlier from the store demo, yeah, that's in the final game's files as well. But for some reason, this one's attached to Lakitu. Even though it is colored a bit differently, it's clearly the same model, or at least a very similar looking trophy. For these next 2 models, they aren't just similar to ones from the store demo, they are exactly the same. I'm talking about this +2 and +3 text, complete with animation. These appeared in the demo when getting a double or triple bogey, and was replaced with actual text that says double and triple bogey in the final game. But they're still sitting here unused in the files. And that's all the models I wanted to look at that went unused in the retail build of Toadstool Tour. But here's the thing. That interactive multi-game demo disc, yeah, that Mario Golf demo has its own unique unused model too. It's a giant logo that just says match along with a ton of stars. It's possible it was meant as a 3D logo for the character match game mode, but that's just speculation based on it having the word match. This was completely removed from the final game's file system, and it was never used in the store demo either. But do you want something more than just unused text in different forms? How about we end the video showing off an entire unused map? This is hole ID number 321, and it's an unused driving range. I'd imagine it was used by the development team to help determine the yards for each character's drive that appears on the character select screen, and it also would have been a great place just to test the game's physics as well. Whatever its intended use was for, I'm just glad to see it's still here, left over and playable in the final game.
Camelot never gave up. From beginning to end, they listened to feedback, made adjustments, all while sticking to their original vision of making Toadstool Tour a bigger, better Mario Golf game. While attendees at E3 might not have cared about it at the time, when fans of the series actually were able to play the final version of the game, they never wanted to put it down. And to this day, you'll see tons of people asking for it to be released on the Switch 2, myself included. One day, I know we're gonna see Toadstool Tour on there. One day.
You made it to the end of the video, thank you so much. Since you watched it all the way through, I'm going to assume you're a huge fan of gaming history. Well, you're in luck because I have uploaded tons of videos over the past decade all about the development of your favorite games. Plus, I'm uploading new videos every single month, so don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.